I really need some guidance on this because it's getting awfully fuzzy, as these things so often do. This fake email alias that Loretta Lynch used when discussing a meeting with Bill Clinton on her plane in Phoenix, I think it was, and there was all sorts of stuff going on at the time, all sorts of questions and queries being dismissed as conspiracy. We have seen now that in fact it looks as if a lot of the media was basically colluding with Lynch to try and bury this story. Can you just walk us through this? What is the genesis of this? What was this meeting, and why is it so important that we pay extra special attention to this?
Sure. So last summer, about 1 week before James Comey stood up and said he was not going to prosecute Hillary Clinton, there was a meeting on a tarmac in Phoenix, and it was Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton. And at the time, the story was that Bill was out and about in Phoenix giving a speech, and he got to the airport, and he realized that the then Attorney General was going to be flying into the same airport. So he wanted to wait around to talk to her. And so when her plane landed, he got out of his plane, he walked over, and they had about a 20-minute conversation. And, we were told last summer that they talked about grandkids and golf. And that was it. No discussion about the investigation into Hillary Clinton, even though Loretta Lynch was the Attorney General and James Comey's boss and controlled the FBI. We were told it was babies and golf. Judicial Watch, of course, didn't believe the story. So we sent a FOIA request, a Freedom of Information Act request, to ask for records about that meeting. And, over a year later, we finally received some records, and most of them were blacked out. They took the black magic marker across different lines in the email to redact information so we can't see what's under it. And what we learned is that there are tons of pages of draft talking points between Justice Department officials and media folks trying to figure out, well, what's the Attorney General going to say? And, our big question now is, why is everything so complicated if they talked about just babies and golf? There shouldn't have been a need for such redactions and such frantic emails. And as you said, we also know that the mass media, the mainstream media, didn't really want to cover this story. A lot of the reporters said, well, I'm being forced by my producer, by my boss, to at least inquire about it.
Right.
They didn't really want to follow up on the story.
Right,
So
and the ABC guys, especially from the outset, saying, oh, sorry, this is coming from our local affiliate station, and, we don't really want to cover it. Well, they didn't say we don't really want to cover it, but it was clear in their intent into this, by their tone, by the words they were using, by the kid gloves they appeared to be wearing when you read through all this stuff. And like you say, if they're talking about babies and golf, why is there 413 pages of redacted documents about this stuff? None of this is making sense, and it feels to me like the net is closing in on something much more nefarious. Would you agree with that?
I think there's a lot more information that needs to be shared. We also learned that Peter Kadzik, who was a senior level Justice Department attorney, was brought in fairly early to handle some of the messaging. You may remember that name because he was one of the people that emailed John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's head of her campaign, and told him, oh, this is going to happen in one of the email lawsuits that Judicial Watch has tomorrow. So, stay tuned for more information. So he was almost an inside mole using a Gmail account to let the Clinton campaign know what was coming ahead. And so, again, as it always is with the Clintons, you get it's drip, 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 a little information at a time. And we're slowly getting to the bottom of this. Although, I do have to say it's still a little troubling that these records were just produced to us this week or late last week, actually. Yes. And this information was redacted. Well, I would expect that from the Obama administration. But now we have the Trump Justice Department. And the Trump administration is still withholding this information from the American public. So, we're still hopeful that the president and, the great people working for his administration are going to re-examine what they did and hopefully release this information to the public.
Absolutely. Sunlight, the greatest disinfectant, and goodness knows we need some pretty serious disinfectant in the ranks of the U.S. government. Michael, what is with this fake email address that Loretta Lynch was using? We haven't even touched on that yet, and that's the latest part of the story. She used an email address that I forget even what the name was. Elizabeth Carlisle, who also happens to be the name of I think some sort of pornographic online persona of someone or the other. So that was quite humorous. But can you talk us through that? How is that even legal?
It is, generally speaking, it is legal. You see that in CEOs of large corporations, a lot of senior level government officials, primarily cabinet secretaries. They use a different name because they don't want to be inundated with email from the public or from employees of the agency or the business. You could just imagine if her email address was loretta.lynch@usdoj.gov, how many emails she could have gotten. But the problem, what the concern is if she was using this email address, did she tell the people that were responding to records requests, to FOIA requests, this is my email address. When somebody like Judicial Watch asks for my emails, don't forget to search Elizabeth Carlisle's email account.
Right.
And we don't know if that was happening. And we don't know, if anybody knew that was her alias so that we could make sure that these records are being produced and made available to the public. So, it raises more questions that the Justice Department, frankly, just doesn't share or doesn't answer. I mean, the Justice Department didn't come out and say, here are emails. It says Elizabeth Carlisle, but that's really Loretta Lynch's emails. It required us and members of the public and some news organizations to really think about it, look at it, and figure it out for themselves.
You know what? I said it. I'm going to have to correct myself because I said a moment ago that the name Elizabeth Carlisle may have been tied to some sort of less than morally correct person on the internet, and I just checked on that and I can't find any evidence for that. So maybe I read that incorrectly the first time I read it. So I want to clarify that it is also the name of an actress. So I just want to be clear, not to impugn the character of Elizabeth Carlisle, the actress. But I appreciate what you're saying about the email address. You can't have, Loretta Lynch at, loretta.lynch@doj.gov.gov. But in my experience, especially in talking with people in very senior positions, be it they in the White House or be they in the British government, they do have email addresses that reflect who they are. Now, it may be LLynch31596 so that she can't get lots of spam email and abuse and so on and so forth. But this really does seem strange to me. And I don't understand the justification. There are people I know in very senior positions who use email addresses that indicate who they are. Why did she not do that?
Yeah, this practice has went on all throughout the Obama administration. So the EPA, the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Lisa Jackson, used the name Richard Windsor.
I can't believe this. I really
Eric
can't.
Holder, Eric Holder used Lou Alcindor as his name for a period of time. And so Loretta Lynch used, and I believe she used Elizabeth Carlisle because that was her grandmother's name. And Elizabeth may be her middle name, I've heard also. But, wait a
minute, Michael, are you telling me that Eric Holder used Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's name?
He did. Judicial Watch released those emails probably about a year and a half ago or so. So it is really amazing the different names that senior government officials within the Obama administration use. And you're right. Generally, it may not be all that much of a problem, but it was the Obama administration. It was the same administration that allowed Hillary Clinton to use a private email server. And so it's nothing new for that administration. Luckily, that administration is no longer in power, and hopefully the new administration is complying with federal law, is making sure that emails are available to the public. And, we would really like for this administration to re-examine records that they're releasing about the previous administration and see which ones can be made public and what information we can get. A lot of these questions could be answered if this administration started doing what it promised during the campaign, which was holding Hillary Clinton and the Obama administration accountable for their actions.
Absolutely. Michael, just before I let you go, I wanted to read the reason that Lou Alcindor thing got my attention was because I wrote an article about, well, let's see, when was it? It was the 7th of December, 2015. It was right after President Obama was lecturing on how wonderful Muslim sporting heroes in the United States are. And I looked into some of the people that he may have been talking about, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar being one of them. And he is previously on the record as having said, none of the people that criticize Sharia law have checked out the law because it's not even for non-Muslims. Sharia law is for ruling an Islamic state. Sharia law is for Muslims. So if there is a Muslim majority state, then it has to be run by Sharia law. I mean, why would Eric Holder want that guy as his alias?
I can't answer that question. It was bizarre times, to say the least, for 8 years.
Well, we're so glad we've got people like you watching out, forcing this transparency, forcing these issues. Michael Bekesha of Judicial Watch, thank you so much for joining us here this morning on Breitbart News Daily.
Thank you so much for having me.